There's 15 days.
How long you got?
Yeah. Realize it's too old.
We got over the meeting starting at back to this. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, welcome everyone. Tonight the workshop meeting. So during the workshop meeting, we not have consideration of visitors whatsoever. You want to look on the agenda with the table over yonder here. You can grab a copy of the agenda items to know what's going on for our work session this evening. If I could, can I get someone to give us the agenda motion? Thank you, Jill. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Ham. Any discussion on the adoption of the agenda? If not, all in favor, say aye. Consent agenda. There a motion to accept the consent agenda. Thank you, Ms. Jill. Is there a second? Second by Annette.
3.4. Ask some questions out of the consent agenda.
Okay, you want to pull substitute pay and have discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see, there's not a second on that, is it?
I seconded it, which is fine.
Second?
The
Okay.
discussion-
Right. So, we should have to pull one for a while, have discussion on that right now then, or?
Typically what happens is that
We'll
there's a motion made and a second to approve everything else,
Right.
and then we come back.
So, okay, we'll pull 3.4 for discussion, everything else. You can motion to accept everything else. Discussion, all in favor, say aye. Okay, 3.4, sub pay, go ahead, Annette.
So I just want to be clear, based on one of the previous meetings we had, substitutes, we have a couple of substitutes on the board here. Are they able to vote on the substitute pay raise?
Jim, usually in the past, I believe we just obtain teachers not to be involved.
But they can, but substitutes can vote on this board to give themselves a raise.
No, that's what I'm saying, we abstain in both.
We didn't last time,
Yeah, and
because the
Right.
question did say that we could not vote for a pay raise. I just want that on the record.
Okay,
There's no change in for the positions that we are substitute.
But we're just saying that. For some pay raise. When it comes.
When, yeah, if there's a pay.
Is Director Nelson, respond to that question, we did some research as far as.
Yeah, so the question, if a board member can vote on it, the answer is yes, even if they are a substitute teacher.
if you're okay with yours, okay, so we have to come back to the sub pay, if we prove everything else. Miss Amy?
So you just ask for a motion on the second, and I'll reiterate, there's no increase for substitute pay, so it's isn't
Correct.
changing or
It's the
anything.
same last.
And even if it was, they would be allowed to vote, but tonight, in front of us, there's no change.
All right, we'll come back to 3.4. Chair, motion and second for discussion, go ahead and talk.
So, I'm sorry to bring this back up. My specific question last time was voting on the employment. That's what we did the research on, that you can vote to approve your employment as a substitute teacher. And so I didn't research about the substitute pay, but my recollection is that the person can still vote for that, but I didn't research it, so I just want to be upfront.
Thank you, Brian.
Ms. Ham, your question?
Well, then, so what do we do? So if you can't vote, it's in the consent agenda, but you pulled it already, so.
We're gonna vote on. Ms. Amy?
If the board felt more comfortable, we could remove, vote on all of them but the substitute pay and do that one separately. That way, if they want to abstain, they can, or they don't have to abstain, but you give them the option to abstain. I'm just throwing it out there. So you'd have 2 votes on this instead of 1.
Any discussion from the board before you want to go with it? Okay, so now we have another amendment to the amendment. Pay, have that as a separate vote. Okay, all right. All right, so let's vote for the consent agenda items. And then we'll come back and do the pay one for the sub teachers.
We already approved the consent agenda. So now we're on the substitute pay raise. So I could, and I will, just to put it out there, make a friendly amendment
To the other amendment.
to remove teacher substitute pay of 180 per day and have that voted on by itself. So then we would then vote on the bus driver, office professional, custodian, maintenance, nutritional services, educational, all of them, but the teacher substitute pay.
Be a separate vote.
I don't think we need a second. I think we'll consider that as just a request.
That's just a
to remove
friendly,
something
yeah,
from
just a
the
friendly
consent
amendment.
agenda.
So everything but the sub pay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you. All sub pays approved. Now we go to the teachers for the employment of the 2 board members.
Or this is, it's for these teachers.
Teacher substitute, which is 180 a day, I believe. 180 a day.
I'll make a motion to approve the teacher substitute pay at 180 per day.
You,
We need a second.
give me a second. Thank you, Annette. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Got that taken care of. Thank you for your information. All right, information items and report, Superintendent.
I'll just briefly mention a few things here. First of all, the election filing timeline, deadline is tomorrow. So half our eligible community members need to sign up tomorrow to serve on the school board or to be considered to serve on the school board. YouTube channel. I have some good news. It was quite a headache there for a while because somehow our account was temporarily disabled. And so we didn't have access to any school board videos for many years. And so we did meet today. Vanessa, technology person, communications person, I was listening to the meeting, and as soon as I stepped out of the meeting, Vanessa did something, and all of a sudden it was back online. So the YouTube videos are there. I don't know how it happened. I'll still give her credit. I left the room, so I don't deserve any credit, but the other 3 were working on all sorts of different things and finally worked. So we apologize for what happened. My gut feeling, and I don't know for sure, but my gut feeling is that it was originally caused because we used something called rapid identity to set up accounts and to delete accounts from the district. And I don't think one of the flags was set appropriately, probably by the software program. And so when a run happened, or when an update happened one day, it deleted accounts that were not tied to employees on our system. So it impacted not just YouTube, but other important software packages. And so we need to go back through and make sure that we have access to the other things as well. But anyway, it's all for tonight. Because we weren't able to test the YouTube system today, so we think we're live streaming now.
I had.
Okay, so apparently that is working, and this meeting will be recorded. Nevertheless, because of some of the audio and video problems we've been having, I am audio taping as well. Ned suggested that, and I thought that might be a nice backup. We won't be able to combine this audio with that video, I think that would be very time consuming. I'm not sure if we'd be able to do that, but at least we have this. Anyway, thank you for the suggestion, Annette. The last item is that my contract does expire on June 30th of 2025. And so the school board should decide if they want to consider offering me another contract. Could be up to 3 years if desired by the board. And I would love to continue working and living here in the district, preferably for another 3 years, but it's up to you if you want to do that. My only request is if you consider another contract, I'd like to do it quickly, because, otherwise I'll look for other work. I don't want to do that, but, obviously I need to make sure that I am gainfully employed next year.
Pam, Rob, and myself are on the committee, and I'll get hold of Pam and Rob, get a date set for yourself. We have a meeting ourselves, we have to go in a little closed session for parameters. Checking in, what we can do, we can start a meeting with you, and I'll get with them and find out, get a date and time set.
And in fact, it's illegal to go into closed session. So it
But I
has to
mean,
be.
for parameters.
Oh, yeah.
We can get together, the three of us, and we'll get a time set. Okay, Pellsbury. Back up to Pellsbury. We'll kick off Pellsbury. You're giving a presentation first, a couple minutes and talk.
Yeah, it's gonna be really short. Let me call it up here. Apologies.
Are you pulling it up on the big screen so people can see it?
Oh, if you could,
Which,
it'd just be the background info.
oh, yeah. Sorry.
I don't know, can you make that a little bit bigger?
I'm wondering if everybody in the audience can see it okay, or if we should do this.
Yeah.
You guys see this okay?
No. Looks like you got some copies over there. For Pellsbury.
Listen, can you roll that forward?
So over the last several months, there have been some requests to view what's called SFAS standards, which stands for Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board standards. And so it was scheduled for tonight. I will tell you that I know Pam sent some questions, but it was while I was on my 2-week vacation. And so I have not had a chance to research those questions or provide definitions. I glanced through them and understand many of them, but I certainly don't understand all of them. I'm also not an expert when it comes to healthy standards, especially when it comes to the most recent changes that have happened over the last few years. There are 3 attachments there on the school board agenda. One has to do with the standards for providers of college education preparing for teachers. So those are the expectations that college, schools of education in colleges must meet. That's kind of a lengthier document. That talks about healthy standards. I'm sorry?
Is it the rules one or the effective practice?
Let me see what it's actually called here. Yeah, it would be the standards of effective practice.
Big document.
Yeah, the big document that is quite wordy and complicated. probably written by a theorist or bureaucrat, I would guess. But that talks about things that college prep programs in Minnesota must provide so that teachers are adequately prepared to meet, these standards once they get a teacher job in Minnesota. The other document is the one internally we will use a lot more. And those are the license renewal conditions. So it's the last 2 pages of this document that was stapled. And so the headline is actually license renewal conditions. And that's particularly important. Well, first it talks about how many clock hours are required for renewal, but then it talks about the different areas that need to be addressed. And I'll just read them just so that in case people can't see it. Positive behavioral intervention strategies, reading preparation, key warning signs for early onset mental illness, suicide prevention, that has to be at least 1 hour, English learners, cultural competency, and then American Indian history and culture. So those are the areas that need to be addressed with our continuing education credit block. There's also another document that was added, should be much of the same information, only looks different, and that would be the Minnesota rules, definitions, and general rules for teaching licenses. The licensed school teachers and administrators are required to meet renewal requirements, including continuing education credit hours. These expectations can be met by learning sponsored by the Teacher Academy or by the school district or by teachers' alternative ways of obtaining that information. Learning required by Pellsby is used to implement district curriculum and state standards for student learning. Really, Pellsby standards are indicative of what needs to be taught to teachers. It doesn't necessarily mean teachers have to implement those particular standards for learning in the classroom. 2 different things. I think that's important. One thing I just want to remind you is that if there's willful non-compliance with state statutes, could result in some significant consequences for the students. And I'll just read them real quickly. For example, there could be grievances filed against the district. If we're not teaching one of the areas, such as positive behavior intervention supports, and we just don't want to do it because we don't believe it, there could be a grievance filed against the district because of obligations to provide those learning experiences.
But clarification, you're still talking teachers, correct?
Correct.
Teaching teachers, you're not talking in the classroom. So we're not required to have PBIS or CL or any of those things in the, or any of the culturally competency in the classroom. You're still talking teachers.
Yeah, Pellsby standards talks about the teaching of teachers.
Exactly.
Now, there are other standards that might require that kind of work, but yeah, this would be Pellsby standards. Could be lawsuits. I've never heard of a lawsuit in this regard. Certainly there could be a lawsuit filed depending on circumstances. One that came up recently, I was chatting with the school's attorney, is that there could be possible liability for individuals. And so I'm just laying it out there just as a precaution as we discuss things and make any decisions that depending on circumstances that could happen. Once again, I'm not aware of that happening in Minnesota. I just want to be upfront with people. Could be calls for removal of board members, potential violation of law. I think that rarely happens in Minnesota. It certainly could, I suppose. And then loss of funding or standardization. So, for example, if, I know there's one school district recently that wasn't gonna make up student days after there was a strike. And the state told them, you are violating state law, you will or could lose funding because you're willfully violating state law. And in the end, they, made up time. So that's one example. I have no idea if that would happen, if LP standards weren't taught to teachers, but, it's possible.
David, before you have your question, any other information you want to put up? All right, so pretty much understanding that it's a state law, state statute, we have no control over state law, state statute. We're going to have discussion tonight, and at 1 hour from now, discussion is going to end on Phillipsburg. 1 hour discussion period on Phillipsburg. There's something we cannot control. It's by state statute, it's by our legislators, our senators, and our representatives who control the state statute. School boards cannot violate, if we just found out, if you would have,
Can I have,
legal action against us. So we start the discussion right now, Ms. Amy. We have 1 hour discussion starting right now.
so I guess you don't need to look it up if this isn't a state law or statute. It wasn't approved by representatives or senators or the governor. This was an group appointed by the governor. They are not elected. They don't make law. Law has to go through, law has to go out through the Capitol, and it's approved by our legislators. This was not. Okay, this was a group of individuals that were appointed by the governor, but this is not state law. So I just want to be clear.
Any questions? Go ahead. I'll find you for your comments, Ms. Pam.
Okay, so I just want to make clarification again, which I already did. But I want to make it again because of what you said, Chair, to start. So again, this is a requirement for teachers. It is not a requirement that any of these things come into the classroom. It's just a requirement that the teachers get 75 hours of training if they're tier 3, if they're going into tier 3, and 125 hours, or is it vice versa? I'm sorry. 125 hours if it's tier 4, right? Yeah. So this does not mean that it goes into the class. So that's one of the main concerns. So I have a bunch of questions, but my main concern and my main question is, how is it being decided? Because we have never had this conversation at this board table. We have never talked cultural competency. We have never talked about what is pre-licensure or licensure requirements, whether or not those come into the classroom. Now, from previous discussions, the first year I was on the board, what I came to learn is that it seems to be assumed that whatever the Teachers Academy teaches comes into the classroom. Because I know part of the Teachers Academy mission is to strategize how to bring these principles and teaching standards into the classroom. That's part of their mission. So I voiced it back then, I'm going to voice it again. This board has never voted yay or nay on all of this stuff in these 8 standards. I don't know how many people have actually read the standards on the board. I guess I'd like to see a show of hands. Has everybody read these standards through line by line? Because I have. Have you?
Yep.
Anybody has it? Okay, good. You have, good, okay. So, because the reason why I really think it's important that we have this conversation is that we have a community who is not aware of, we showed them the curriculum. We gave them an opportunity, but they're not aware of these standards. They're not versed in them. We've not really provided them, except now they're on the school board agenda. We've not provided it with them. And there's a lot of items in here that I have heard back from community members they don't want taught in the classroom. So I wanted for us to go through this package, these standards, and start asking some of the questions of what does this look like in the classroom, and how is this going to help improve our grades, our academic grades? Because a lot of these things that are in here are non-academic. They're more social. social things. So that's just my start at it, and, okay, I'll let other people take the floor if they have questions, but I have a bunch of questions I wanna ask. But I wanna leave room.
Anyone else have any more that question or what we're gonna be doing tonight, for the next 1 hour?
One thing I'll add is that we are in the middle of a significant learning phase. These particular recertification standards, I think, have been in place since 2020. And there's some, or as far as for teachers with licenses expiring in 2020, these requirements have been in place 4 years ago. But there are other changes afoot. I just want to be open about it. First of all, we need to implement a new teacher development and evaluation system for state law. So Stacy, Joe, and Mike, I'm sure we'll be on that over the next few months, at least a few months to go through this. And, to develop our own TDE update, our teacher evaluation system. And then second, there is, I just lost it, 2 more important parts. Oh, and of course, different state standards are being implemented. So for example, social studies standards for students are being implemented too. So I don't want to say that none of this will ever be in the classroom, because there could be some components of teacher development and education evaluation that would be part of it. Could be social studies standards that would be part of it, or in some other area. So I just want to be free. My impression that today's discussion was just focused on LB standards, what teachers need to do to become licensed and to stay licensed in Minnesota. So it's kind of a different scope.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so, when I asked for this, I did specifically say how, these are the standards for teachers to be recertified, but then what happens with them? Because like I said, these have been going into the classroom without this board's approval. So one of the things when we talked about, when we went ahead and authorized, voted on the curriculum, we had not had a discussion at the board level as to what standards we agreed to that would go into the curriculum. And same thing is with these Pellsby standards, because I know, because I was on the Teachers Academy on the board, the committee, I know that these things are going into the classroom. So the discussion that I would like to have tonight is making sure, first of all, one, that our public is aware these things are going to the classroom, but also make it this board aware of what's in here. And if we continue to agree that anything that's in the relicensures goes into the classrooms, that we vote them and are accountable as a board to our community, that we are voting these in, or voting, or saying, no, we don't want to. So, I'll start with the questions if I can.
I would like to respond to that.
Yes.
I think what you're suggesting is micromanagement of our teachers. And so I think we have to be really leery about, believing that we need to approve everything that's discussed in the classroom. I think that would be impossible to do, and I think it's unwise to do. Now, there can certainly be some discussions about how things transpire. I'll give you a good example. So I know that in one of the districts I've served, there were some surveys given to students that asked for, I think, gender identity. And there were like 10 or 12 different options given. And, in every school I've been, those kinds of revealing questions, just don't pass muster. They'd be against school policy, and certainly that's true here in St. Francis. And so, if there was a survey of some sort like that, it has to be approved through the administration and possibly even the school board. So I think that's an important, point to make. So there are some controls that we have, but I don't think we want to be deciding everything in advance, what's going to be taught in school.
Ms. Aaron?
Well, I think we should start talking about what the standards are, because the school board not approving curriculum, which anytime teachers start talking to students, that's curriculum. If there's something that the board says, then that's not micromanaging, that's living up to the community standards. So I think we should start discussing the Pellsbury standards, and then we'll see we'll see where it takes us.
Ms. Pam?
Yeah,
Question?
so one of the things that, if we go into the effective practices, and I did a bunch of questions, and you guys all have them, so I'm being totally transparent with you. All the questions that I sent to both Stacy and Superintendent Carson, you have a package of it. It starts with good morning, Carson. So there's no surprise here. I'm being totally transparent of what my concerns are, my questions are. So, expecting these things to go into the classroom. And again, I hear that we don't necessarily expect them all to go into the classroom, but you think that it's micromanaging. So, for student learning. So I want to understand sometimes what these definitions are and some examples are, but if we get down into some of the details, teacher needs to understand each student's cultural background and align with each in order for the students to gain knowledge and skills. Okay, so just that one alone, to expect our teachers to understand each student's cultural background. So this is the concern that I have here is there's been a lot of focus on people of color, POC. Okay, it's been talked about a lot at this board, it's been talked about across the state, across the country. This, a teacher needs to understand each student's cultural background. I don't know how we can expect teachers, and if this is what they've got to come forward in order to be initially certified and all that, but I mean, this goes back to Pellsbury, and our community should be pushing back at Pellsbury. But for them to know that that's a huge thing, it's not so, how many kids are in a classroom typically? Is it 30?
Oh, it ranges from 25
to 30, so that's a lot of, and then if they have, in an elementary school or in a high school, you've got multiple classes of 25 to 30, right? So that's a lot of students that you need to understand these things. And then what's the definition of culture? So these are the questions that I can. How will each teacher gain understanding of each of their students' culture in order to stimulate cognitive process? This is right out of the book, okay? How will a teacher gain understanding of every student's social, emotional, and cultural ways of learning? I don't know how, if we put that stuff onto our teachers, I don't know how they're supposed to do that. And so when they can't do that, I don't know how they pick and choose how to implement.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah,
Actually related to each one of those?
yeah.
First, under standard 1, part D, the teacher understands how alignment with a student's cultural background is necessary. I read that as being very different than each student's cultural background.
If we're talking equity and equality, a student, I am a student, Rob is a student, we're all a students.
Mhm.
So how are they gonna pick and choose? Oh, I'm just gonna focus on a student in my classroom out of 30, or am I gonna focus on all of them? So I mean, I'm not trying to critique this administration, this district, okay? I'm saying the people that wrote this, and I have to say, I'll just, so everybody understands, I sat on the 9-hour-long Zoom call, and I have all of the people that got online and objected to this and accepted it. And there was, and part of it was our community people, because I recognized names. But these were people of all walks of life. And I thought I wrote it down here somewhere, but it was like 60 opposed it and 11 agreed, and that was partially true. I didn't even get through all of it. I didn't add all of it up. But there was a lot of opposition, most of it, and it was grandparents, it was teachers, it was, some of our lawmakers, it was pastors, I mean, it was, parents, it was previous, retired teachers, current teachers, it was the whole gamut, because I sat in the whole thing. And spoke at it, of course, too, but these standards, there was a lot of pushback with Judge Mortensen. Unfortunately, and part of what that was all about was, was this administered properly? And a lot of people opposed to it, but it went through anyway. So yeah, you say a student, so I say, what does that mean?
Yeah,
A student.
but, what I'm saying is that I think there's an important distinction, because this is not requiring each teacher to understand each student's cultural background,
And what do they?
cognitive, linguistic, social, emotional, and physical development, or that kind of thing. It's to understand how those things interact with kids and how they can be impacted.
So what does this look like in the classroom? And I know we should probably have somebody from the Teachers Academy up here probably talking, maybe we do that at a future meeting, to talk about what they've done and how they strategize to get their teachers, and which ones they're focusing on.
And one, just a real quick example, would be making sure that the classroom is welcoming to all students.
How do you do that?
Well, and that's why we have teachers, trained teachers, who understand how to make that happen. And so they would be the ones who would be discussing, welcoming environment for kids. So for example, there could be, and this is just, this is not coming from our teacher academy or anything like that, but it could be having pictures of kids of different races than just the majority race. So that Black children can see figures of Black people in the classroom. Hispanic people. It might be celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. Those kinds of things. Those are just things that come to mind as some examples of how to welcome. So that we aren't just
But then,
messaging to straight white Christian males like myself.
but then, these are real things. But then where does the videos come in? That are anti-Christian, that are shown in the classrooms, that are anti-Republican, that are, there's things that have come into the classroom that have been brought to my attention, and I believe they've been brought to your attention, but I can share it with you. But I mean, I'd love to show them here just so everybody sees, but.
What's an anti-Christian video? I'm not, that one doesn't.
Well, I'm not gonna go into all the details, I can certainly show you the video, but there's anti-Republican, there was some anti-Trump.
There was one instance that came to our attention, in one of the schools, where a teacher, put something together for an instructional, kind of a non-core instructional learning moment, and she made a mistake.
Okay,
There were some references against Trump, I think in particular.
there was Trump and there was other things in it.
Yeah, and so we received that complaint and we took action to remedy it.
Okay, so I appreciate that, but here's the question I have. The only reason why that came to your attention is because a student told their parent, hey, took action. What we don't see is what's happening on a regular basis. So these are the kinds of things that, how are we as a board? We are accountable as a board for these things. There's things that are going into the classroom, and that's why and I know Amy has spoke to it a number of times too. We're so very careful, and we want to make sure that anything that goes in the classrooms, Amy has said anything that goes on the walls is curriculum. So we are sending messages constantly. And if we're leaving it up to our teachers, I don't think it's fair to our teachers. It's not fair to our staff. If they're the ones that are making the decisions on what goes on walls and what video to play, and then all of a sudden the parent goes, whoa, what is this? And there was another video that was played before that that was very anti-Hispanic. It was disrespectful to the parent that was on the video. It was a cartoon. It was a very disrespectful, not well thought out video that was showed. A parent rose up against it. That's the only reason why us as a board even heard about it. So this is why I'm so adamant about it. And I'm not trying to micromanage. I'm trying to say, what are the guardrails? What are the things we want to focus on academics? And we haven't said that enough this past year and a half, because we've done some great things here around reading and focusing on our academics. But when we have teachers who, out of the blue, just for fun, or it's not for fun, that wasn't a fun video, that was a crazy video, it didn't make any sense to me. Why would we have that in the classroom? So if we've got a teacher who's doing that, I'm almost certain we have other teachers that are doing the same thing. I don't know how many, but when you have these many teachers, people are doing things.
Okay.
We need to propose a guard.
And I said.
Yeah. I don't know how to say it over you.
So, I know if there's the statement that we don't want to have, we recognize these standards and we don't want to have our teachers teaching them. But they have to come up for recertification. And part of that whole process is ensuring that their renewal, that they've been implementing the standards since they got their initial license. And regarding cultural competency, that's one of the portions. It talks about that they should promote self-reflection and discussion, including but not limited to the following topics. You can't say that, yeah, we recognize that there's standards, but we don't want you teaching them. It's like telling a cosmetologist, yeah, you got license problems, but we're gonna do it this way, and we don't care if you strike people's hair or not. Then they get licensed for X, and their profession tells them to not follow what they're being taught. This is what the state has approved. If we have a problem with that, we need to work with the LSP. It's not something we can change here at the district.
Miss Amy?
I disagree. And I'll tell you why. The standards are for teachers to recertify. There are certain things that I will be comfortable putting into the classroom, and I will tell you some of the things I'm not comfortable with are things that the socioeconomic, well, we'll just talk about it. We'll dive right in. We'll go to number D. How shall we?
2D.
How does the teacher come to know all the different types of identities and socioeconomic classes, groups each student identifies with, so they can affirm them and incorporate them into the learning environment? Sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic class, and religious beliefs. Why is the state pushing us to go there? It's no wonder why the state of Minnesota, that used to be number 7, has now fallen to 17, because we're not talking about math or reading, we're talking about this garbage. Okay? There are many parents out there that don't want the teachers talking to them about their gender and their socioeconomic. They don't want you to. Just because you got the license to teach, you're not a social worker.
But which standard are you at?
That is number D.
2D.
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 Parents don't want you discussing this with their kids, their kids. There are some parents that will talk about transgenderism and support their child, and they have every right to do that. But I also believe that you have parents that don't believe in that. They do believe that it's a mental disorder, and they don't want you talking to their kids about it and affirming it. So let's stay away from the fire. I want every student to walk in this building and feel safe and secure. We're so busy affirming, we're forgetting that all students and parents need to be affirmed, not just a small group. So let's stay away from all this and let the parents parent. It's not up to the teachers to get involved in this. It's kind of weird. Okay? It's really weird, creepy.
So
That teachers think that they get to talk to my grandkids about this. You don't get that right.
first of all, this is in the document that is required of providers of teacher education in colleges. That's where that statement is taken from. It is.
I have it under D. When a teacher comes to know. But now this may be teachers with teachers, but I don't want this in the classroom.
So you're saying
It's
that,
tier 3 licensure. So I don't know what you're,
yeah, that's all determined by the state. Tier 3 and Tier 4 is a state function. Or no, I'm sorry, that is determined by the district. You're right.
that's the district. So this is district, this is,
But it doesn't
It's not
mean we have to teach those particular areas. This is not.
So that's what we're gonna talk about. And I agree with that 100%. So let's talk about it and say, we're not gonna talk about that. And what else aren't we gonna talk about it with the kids?
But here's some practical, realistic examples. Should we ban books that have gay characters?
we're not talking.
I'm not talking about banning books that have gay.
That's curriculum in our, that's curriculum.
The teacher isn't gonna stand up in front of a classroom and affirm it. There's a big difference, Kirsten.
So.
A
so
big
your answer,
difference.
You do not want to remove books with gay characters from the classroom, because I think there are a lot of people who do.
I don't know. I don't think that's what we're discussing here today.
Sure.
We're talking Pellsbury standards, not library books. Aren't we? Library books is the one we're
So
talking
we
in
have-
policy.
We have curriculum, it cannot talk about gender identity or talking about anything like that. We have to leave it off.
We haven't got there yet. We're having the conversation.
Mhm.
We haven't said, can't do any of this. I'll tell you, I've had parents come to me and their kids are so tired. So you said surveys. It's not coming into the classrooms via survey, because you shut it down. Maybe there's still some surveys, but you made it pretty clear about surveys, right?
Mhm.
Okay, that's not how it's coming in. It's coming in verbally. Verbally. I had a parent come to me and said, my kids are so tired of, from the very beginning, talking about gender and what's your gender, and then my kids come home and say, well, now they're this gender, well, now they're that, in the classroom, now they're that gender, and they flip flop, and the kids are being confused by the conversations within the classrooms.
By
It's
teachers.
not okay with
By
teachers. First of all, the teachers control the environment in the classroom, correct? So if there's,
We
so
don't
the
control
teachers are asking, I don't know how many, their names, but they're asking it, and this is all around, and so yeah, it is around gender. Title IX's coming up, and Title IX says boys can be in girls' bathrooms and girls can be in boys' bathrooms. That can beat around the bush about, but that's right?
We're not talking about that.
Okay, but that gets talked about in the classroom too.
Hey, Nate, you have a question, comment?
I just trying to get it back on, the standards of effective practice, which is where all this stuff is coming in. And these are essential knowledge and skills a teacher needs in order to be effective. None of it states this is what you will teach and how you will teach. This is a toolkit that schools are required to provide teachers to get their license. Okay? It's not.
Yeah.
Or read right? The standard effective practice is for initial, and then you get into the other. Here's the license renewal stuff, which is about, to me, very important things. Behavioral intervention strategies, English learners, suicide prevention, key warning signs for early onset of mental illness. Those are the things that are important that our teachers are doing. This Pellsbury licensing, again, is a requirement that the state has, and it is in law. 122A 187 and 122A 18, it gives Pellsbury the right to determine the licensing standards. So it is in law for those licensing requirements for our teachers to be able to legally teach in our district. None of it says this is how you will teach. We determine that by approving curriculum and instruction decisions that we have educated, licensed expert that brings that to the board. We make those decisions. what we have. We've approved curriculum.
We've not made the cultural competency decision yet.
That is
It's not even had this the first.
That's a
It's
licensing.
sent by, they speak on the other floor.
It's a licensing requirement. Right. It does not, we have approved curriculum that has cultural competency aspects within it. Doesn't have everything that's listed in standards of effective practice, but it has parts of it. It doesn't have everything. We have approved that. That is our rule. Curriculum and instruction, not Pellsbury licensing standards. That's what law mandates that they determine. And our teachers must have to teach. It's just like driving a car. You have to pass certain things to be able to get your license. We don't pick and choose what we're gonna have out of that licensing. We pick and choose the curriculum and instruction decisions, which is what I think we have been doing. If we need to discuss more on curriculum, then that's where this discussion should be. I understand what is being brought up. Great that we're discussing it. It doesn't relate to Pellsbury licensing standards. It relates to classroom instruction, which is a completely different topic. Curriculum is a different topic.
Ms. Amy?
Curriculum is when a teacher stands in front of a student and starts instructing the classroom. So there are Pellsbury standards. The Pellsbury standards, it stated right in here, how does the teacher support students while teaching their specific subjects? What are examples of how a teacher communicates verbally and non-verbally to demonstrate respect and responsiveness to differing religions? Are teachers expected to know all religions? Are teachers expected to affirm gender identities and sexual orientations? And how would they do that? Can we compel employees to go against their conscience? These are questions we need to answer. We need to answer them here at this table. Because curriculum is, anytime, teachers can bring in whatever they want to the classroom. In fact, when we hired Mr. Anderson, one of the concerns we had was the board, it was right after that teacher brought in a video. And we spoke about it in your interview process, and if I recall, your answer to that question was you would like to see a library so that only the teachers could go to that library and pull out things so that that would never happen again. That hasn't happened. I don't, and I'm not saying you should have done it. Well, you did say.
Because that was what we thought was
No,
gonna happen.
you did say, I'm not gonna lie, but you can question it, but that's what you said.
And that is question, comment?
But, well, you're gonna cut me off?
Well, you're done. You're done with your speech.
I'll let her.
Okay, continue on.
So I think it's important that we come together and we ask these questions. Yes, the Pellsbury standards are from teacher to teacher, but we as a board can say, you know what? The teacher can talk about that towards each other, but I don't want this in the classroom, and this is what we're not going to have in the classroom. And I think it would serve our district very well. First of all, then we're supporting all students. We're not supporting just students with and parents with these ideologies. Because let's face it, we're a public school system. Every student that walks through our doors should feel comfortable. Not just your comfort zone or your comfort zone or Nate, your comfort zone. What about the students that don't share this and their parents? Why? Because, they said you need to learn this to get your licensure. Okay, fine, learn it to get your license. But I think it's okay for us as a board to say, but you're not gonna bring this and talk about it with the students. It's off limits. It's creepy to me, again, that they wanna talk about, and you wonder why parents are pulling their kids faster out of public schools. It's because they wanna talk about all this stuff with their kids. Parents don't want you talking about it with them. And I will say this, there are teachers that have come to me, they don't want to teach this. So you're gonna force those teachers, great teachers, I think we have a teacher shortage. Last time I heard, what, you think every teacher's in favor of teaching this? I don't think so. fact, I know one that just quit recently. So I think it's important to our teachers, the ones in our district who don't want to do this. Especially with the kids. But you know what they say, get the kids young. This is trying to get them young. We're not gonna do that to District 15 students. That's up to the parents. And we'll see our test scores go up if we stay away from this stuff. Let's start talking about how we're gonna improve reading, how we're gonna improve math, not what gender are you and, you know. No, parents don't want you talking about it with their kids. In fact, we had a parent come to our board meeting last fall, and I still don't think she's been answered. Question of our teachers asking kids what gender they are. Because she asked that, she wanted to know what our answer was, and I don't ever recall getting an answer.
I'm
Amy,
not aware of anyone.
Amy Faines came.
Oh, yeah, she came 2 or 3 times and asked the same question.
I remember, but I'm not aware of any teacher who asked that.
There is one at the high school
Well,
that I'm aware of.
you know, I'm not gonna start, talking to every single teacher about every single issue. I mean, if there's a complaint, then we'll take the complaint and then we'll follow.
But that's why it's important to get guardrails, because you can't expect the teacher to know, because some of them are talking about. So you can't expect them to know, and that's why we need to put guardrails in place so they know, this is off limits, this is off limits, and this is off limits. Stick to this area, we need to bring our academic grades up. And the problem too is when the teachers start talking about it and displaying things in the classroom, it gives the students this permission to start talking about it more. And then you get division and you get creepiness. You get people feeling uncomfortable with things. Other students, they just want to come and learn how to read and do math and get better so they can go off and have a great career and a great life. They don't want to get into all this. Right here, again, under 2D, it says sex. Language, sex, and gender. And gender identity is separate, sexual orientation. So what's sex? What is that? What does that mean?
She covered a lot of my bullet points. I would love to give teachers a tool to focus on academics, to get the grades up so that they can be proud and prideful of when the MDE comes out and says, I don't know what St. Francis is doing over there, but their grades are skyrocketing. This is detracting from it. This is damaging if they are forced to bring it into the classrooms. It's going to take away from the academic time because they're going to take time to focus on something. What do we take away? What do we drop to focus on some of this? They can train, they can get their and just not bring it into the classroom. We just need to focus on grades. We need to focus on the fundamentals to get them out into the real world and bring it into the classroom. Detracts, in my opinion, from all that and reduces study time, takes away from everything that we're here for.
Nate?
Limiting teachers on how they teach is going to be more detrimental to our district than the fear of mandated instruction on cultural competency. There is no mandated instruction on cultural competency in our district. There is no one saying this is what you will teach, how you will teach it. We have curriculum that we have approved that our teachers follow. We have students, we've all said that this is a public school. We have students that want to discuss this. It's their right as well to discuss these things, whatever it is, right? As a public school, they should have a place that they can discuss some of these things. That is part of the public school. We just said there's students that don't want to discuss. We agree with that as well. They have to have a place. In order to raise scores, students' emotional needs have to be met. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It is something that has been around forever. It is proven that if needs are not met, students don't learn. If you suppress emotional things within students, they will not learn. If you suppress nutrition, they will not learn. It's the basic needs. We have to have an environment for our students to meet some of those needs. That is our role as a public educational district.
Ms. Jill?
Completely agree with what Nate just said. I know a number of times tonight it's been brought up that people have come and talked to us. Students come and talk to us regarding some of these very issues of where they either felt accepted in our district or felt like they were not accepted in our district because of some of these exact items in the cultural competencies. If we're gonna say that they can't discuss them or allow these discussions to occur, then we're discriminating against those sets of persons, whatever those sets of persons that you don't want to have the discussion about. I mean, if we want to discriminate, I guess that's what we'll be known for as well.
How is that discrimination?
Stand by. Go ahead.
I want you to define what discrimination is, because that's an
Stand by, Ms. Van.
I don't think there's anything to respond to. If we can't talk about any of these topics, and you're gonna say that they're not topics that can be discussed and make people feel welcome in our district, that's discriminating against them.
Defines discrimination, because I don't know where I can connect those dots. Discrimination? How are we discriminating?
That-
What does discrimination mean? Because that's in some of this stuff, and it's not really defined. You know, it says that there's white supremacy in here. If you look at standard 8, the standard 8 goes right into standard 8C. The teacher understands how ethnocentrism, Eurocentrism, deficit-based teaching, and white supremacy undermine pedagogical equity. I want to know in the classroom what's going on, that is there white supremacy in the classroom when we're trying to teach math or reading? How is this we're talking, you guys, in the classroom.
What you're referring to, though, is what colleges are expected to teach potential candidates. It's not what we're doing here in St. Francis. It's not what we're doing in the classroom.
Okay.
College-
We can't tell what's here versus what's here. We can't tell because we know we are teaching teachers here with our Teachers Academy. We're using that vehicle to help recertify teachers, are we not? Are we not? Are we
And
using
we are
Teachers Academy?
obligated to follow cultural.
Correct.
Look at the last page. Look at the last
Of
page
which one?
of that big document. The very last page.
The big document?
Yeah, the
meaning
one that you were,
the other. I think you're talking about the Minnesota rules, or you're talking
Licensing and rule conditions.
Yeah,
Or
the small ones. Yes,
so it's the same packet.
yeah.
It talks about,
It should promote, so I read it.
yeah, I think we're still looking at a different document. So this says cultural competency training should
Should promote.
promote self-reflection and discussion.
Mhm.
It doesn't say cultural competence training means we have to do A, B, and C in the classroom.
And I'm thankful for that, because that gives us the option.
And then it says, training programs must be designed to deepen teachers' understanding of their own frames of reference,
Yes.
the potential bias in these frames, and their impact on expectations for and relationships of students, families, and school communities.
Right.
That's not the same as what you read at the beginning under standard 2. That is a
In this?
very different feel, very different.
Wait. Now you confuse me. So this cultural competency basically mirrors standard 2, because again, this is the initial and the tier 3, right? And then this is the recertification and up into the tier 4.
So, college prep programs for educators have to address those things.
When you say college prep, you're saying I want to become a teacher.
I went to Lutheran college called Concordia College
Right.
in Minnesota.
To become a teacher.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
okay.
now this is years ago, so a lot of this wasn't in place then, but a potential teaching candidate now, if it's gonna be accredited by the state or approved by the state, that college prep program for teachers would have to incorporate that in some form or fashion.
All right, let me ask.
They get approved by the state.
Let me ask you the question, because I had this in my email, and I know there was a lot in that email, so I understand if you didn't catch all that I said, but teachers seeking an initial tier 3 license. So that means what? Do we have anybody here in this district, or have we, or will we have anybody who's seeking tier 3?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, but I believe tier 3 would be, people new to the teaching profession.
Correct.
So their first teaching experience.
3 years in, times 3.
Yeah, and then also out-of-state candidates. So you might have somebody.
So my question again is, do we have teachers here, or will have teachers here that are trying to get their tier 3 licensure? This all applies.
They have their tier 3 licensure, right, Brandon? Is that before we employ them? Or they could be eligible for it?
They're working towards it.
Right. Anybody who completes a teacher prep program gets a tier 3, whether it's in Minnesota or in another state.
Do we hire anybody without a tier 3? That was my question. So we have teachers, people here who are working towards, they're working towards their tier 3 licensure. You just said it. We have.
Yes, but they're tier 1 and tier 2, and those are very different expectations. So tier 1 would be somebody who just graduated from, let's say, it's a bachelor's degree, wants to be a teacher, has some background, so they can be eligible for a tier 1 license. Tier 2 would be, strategy and Brandon, you have it down so well.
Yeah, they are in a teacher prep program.
Yeah, but before they can get a tier 3, they have to complete the teacher prep program.
This is standards of effective practice for those trying to get to a tier 3.
Yeah.
And it's also, for relationship.
Yeah, then we take.
Via
we take-
portfolio process.
Yeah, that's, and I don't represent the state in any way, thankfully.
Yeah.
But, portfolio, at least for administrators, let's say I graduate from the school of Montana, College of Montana, and I came here, I might be able to demonstrate through a portfolio process that I have the experience, skills, and knowledge, in order to qualify. So that would be the portfolio. I don't believe we do that in any form or fashion. So they would have to finish the prep program to get a tier 3 or tier 4. That's what the bulk of this big document is. These are the expectations that colleges in Minnesota have to give potential teachers in order for them to be eligible. I mean, we don't have any control over it. It's not in our jurisdiction in any form or fashion, except, once they have that license, they have to go through the pre-licensure process. And those standards are listed here in cultural competency.
Sure.
Pretty
simple.
I think it's very different. Here it says, we should promote self-reflection and discussion. We're having a discussion right now.
Right.
If we're having this discussion with teachers and we frame it a certain way, they could get clock hours to move towards that. So I think discussion is healthy, self-reflection is healthy. And it's good to have dialogue with different people, because then I can understand you, you can understand me. And then it talks about making sure teachers understand their own frames of reference. So it doesn't mean you have to change your frame of reference. It doesn't mean you have to do any of that stuff. And then also recognize potential bias and the impact on people we serve. So I think it's, it's not nearly as strong as what the college I mean, typically schools will have 6 to 8 hours over a 5-year period in terms of cultural content.
So here's the dilemma. The dilemma is we get a new teacher come in. They just went through all this and they're saying, I need all this to go and teach in St. Francis. Because that's what I just did. I got licensed to teach in St. Francis. And these are the things that I just went through. So I'm fresh, I'm good. I know how to affirm my students in all these things. I look at social economic, I do all these things. Now, that teacher comes into St. Francis. And St. Francis, because the board has sat down and reviewed these things and says, you know what, this is what our community is or isn't about. And this is how we want to live in this community. In St. Francis, yes, you come in, but guess what? I know you had to do all this for certification, and it's called Standards of Effective Practice in here in Minnesota. It's not in every state, right? It's just Minnesota. And, as Amy said, these are not elected people. They're a committee that, but when they come to St. Francis, how are they supposed to know? Unless we tell them, unless we put guardrails. Says, you know what, I know you just learned all this stuff. You know what? You need to set this aside, this aside, and this aside. Not all of it. Because there's a lot of good stuff in here. There's important things in here. And we do want teachers to have a lot of these important. But this new standard that came out in 23, okay, that got approved in 23, our community, many people in the state of Minnesota rose up against this vehemently, just like the social studies standards that are trying to get through. And we need to pay attention to that and say, okay, we are still an independent school district and we still get to make the rules around here as to what goes into curriculum, what gets taught, what doesn't. So that's why this discussion. So again, I'm not blaming this district or anything. I'm just saying we need to be cognizant that we have new people coming in as teachers. We have teachers that are recertifying the things, and we may not want that in our classrooms. And we've heard from people who don't want it in our classrooms. Now, if we want to offer, I mean, let's talk brainstorm, right? We can still offer a bunch of this stuff, but not in the normal everyday classrooms. If we want to do some community ed, I mean, let's be creative. We do not have to put it into the mainstream everything. And if we have individuals that want to learn all these other things or be more cognizant in it or understand all these other things, we certainly can teach them in a different manner or outside of the mainstream where all of our students have to be exposed to. Because now it seems to be exposed, they're exposed more and more in more classrooms, not just certain subjects.
So here's how I put my 2 cents into the whole discussion tonight. One, you have only about 7 minutes left for discussion. We're done at 7:50. 2, I'll bring in my experience as a sub teacher in the classroom. One is a sub teacher. I've never ever seen a classroom environment, paperwork telling me what I can and cannot teach in a classroom. I've never ever seen or heard teachers talk about this in the classroom. When I sit around with them during lunchtime, they never complain to me about it. I would believe that most of our teachers are very sensitive to the situation. And granted, you learn some stuff in the academy, but do you implement that into your classroom? Probably not everything. And I feel comfortable as a parent of my kids in the school district in the past. Nobody ever brought to my kid, and I asked them both, have you ever heard of anybody ever, when you're in school, talking about gender, sex, transgender, LGBT, whatever, class people? Have you ever heard that when you were in St. Francis? I said, no, Dad, we never heard that before. I don't care if it's a long time ago, it was yesterday. Not heard. And I believe our teachers are very sensitive in this area, and they probably will not touch it because they don't want the feedback of being persecuted by the board or the community. So they, you know what, when in the classroom, we're teaching math and science and reading and welding and community, and we're teaching that stuff. I've never seen a lesson to talk about this. I never have. And I've been in classroom 12 years.
And but Mike, you just got to tell us, how many days did you substitute teacher last year?
And I'm a sub last year, 4 days. The year before that could be multiple. Last year, because of the military, work we worked on, I limited myself to 4 days only. So we see our stuff here, folks. Believe it's being brought to our classroom. Is to get your license, to be licensed. Take the military, you go to military school, and they teach you everything. And you go out to your unit, and they say, you know what you learn in school, forget about it. This is how we do it in our unit. And we learn how to do our job at that unit level. And our teachers, I believe, are the same way. They're not bringing this stuff to our classroom. Now, granted, could there be an issue where 1 or 2 people said something, did something, showed a video, one teacher, out of what we have, 300 plus teachers? 300 plus. And if one person did something, do we persecute the whole group because of that? No, we don't. No, we don't. So folks, I feel comfortable, and I went through all this stuff, like was on the screen here yesterday. I went through it all. I don't see it happening in our class. Yes, Amy?
So, first of all, I'm not gonna persecute our teachers. Having this discussion, at this table is not persecution. It is, and that's your definition. I will say it's us coming together and figuring out what curriculum will be in the classroom, which is part of board's duty. We in this district, and I know for a fact, we have many areas that welcome those students. In fact, there's clubs. Couple of them at the high school, which I'm all for. Having those clubs for those students so that they have a place where they can go talk and feel welcome and secure. This is not about making any child feel not secure. It's making all children feel secure with all different viewpoints. And most of those viewpoints is none of our business. It is to educate our students and teach our students. Our teachers are not social workers. We're putting way too much on their plate. Probably why our test scores are dropping. And,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
and so at some point we need, I don't know, maybe we talk to the teacher academy to find out what is being filtrated in and to make sure that we are specific on, keeping it to academics and not floating off into these other areas. Because you say it hasn't been in the past, we're moving into the future, and everywhere you turn, every street you go down, it's like, it's pummeled, it's just, for some, and there's been lawsuits against school districts. Both, it's not only Christian, it's Muslim and many religions of faith that don't want you talking to their kids about this. I think it was St. Louis Park.
Yeah.
Was sued because they read a book. And the Muslim families brought forth a lawsuit because, again, they don't want you talking to their kids about it. It isn't about discrimination or making one student feel uncomfortable. Why don't we make all students feel comfortable and talk about what 2 + 2 is, which is 4? And division.
So I just want to remind that these are tools that help improve teachers be better teachers. And I'm going to give it a couple examples. English language learners. We have a lot of teachers saying, I don't know how to teach kids that can't speak English. I don't know what to do. So we're providing the training with strategies that you can put right in their classroom. That's going to improve our test scores. If they
That's good. That's good.
if they
I
get
support that.
English language learners, we will not get better test scores. It is not just one group of kids we're working with. We've got all kinds of kids we're working with. Cultural competency. This is about improving me as a teacher and being able to see the richness and depth in my classroom and being able to work with all students. It says it's all about self-reflection. It's about to understand it, seeing my own bias. I have seen it. I've grown from that. You only improve yourself to be a better teacher so that they can achieve what we want them to achieve. So that's what this is about. It's not about a lot of things I'm being here in this room. This is about improving me as a teacher so that I can help my kids have reading scores and test scores.
So,
Yes, ma'am.
Very well said. So what is wrong with putting some guardrails in place?
This is, we are providing training.
teachers are coming out of college with all this. And they're like, why would I learn all this? This is effective practice. And right here, it's affirming, and it's looking at social economics. So why not say very specifically, so that our community and our parents, so that when they hear things, when their students come home and tell them, this is what went on today, the parents don't have to worry about it. The students coming home saying, this is what went on. And my kids are getting really frustrated of talking about it all the time and being confused with it. When we get that feedback back,
What's an example of a guardrail?
a guardrail just specifically says, we don't want you talking about genders or asking kids what their genders are. Why don't we have some simple things and say, do not go there? And don't ask the student what their social economic is, or, I mean, these things, and I appreciate what you're saying, Stacy, and, you know, you guys are probably looking at me like I'm just the stupidest person here, but I hear people and I see proof of teachers who are talking inappropriately to students.
Okay,
So
thank you.
why not just,
At this time, I'm bringing this discussion to an end. It is now 7:50. I told you I'll give you 1 hour. 1 hour is now up. I want the records to show also that Nate Burke left the meeting at 7:50 because he had another meeting to attend this evening. So we're now down to a short one board member, just for the record to show. Okay? Thank you very much. Move on. What's on the agenda next is upcoming meeting preliminary topic. You want to talk about that? Miss Amy?
I have a question. So we had the meeting, so where does I think the question should ask from the board chairs, where does the board feel comfortable going now? We're just gonna end it without, where are we going? Because what I'm feeling is, I just appeased you. I gave you your hour and I ended it right at the hour.
Mhm.
I appeased you and now we're done. Put the lid down and we're not gonna discuss it anymore. And I don't feel comfortable leaving it without finding what roadmap are we taking? Because I don't believe we're finished.
Well, at this time, there will be no further discussion on tonight's meeting on Pillsbury. Read their stuff, look at it, ask questions, but for this evening, Pillsbury's now come to an end.
So what's the next steps?
At this point, I don't have any future to have Pillsbury back on the schedule. We talked about it, we discussed it, we got information on it. There's nothing I can say or the teachers can say that can make anybody change their mind. We have teachers that are very, very sensitive to it. I don't believe our teachers are teaching what you're always complaining about here. I'm in the classroom, I've never seen it. Miss A, Ned?
So there's a policy that can be put in place, sort of guardrails.
That's the guy.
Policy. And I just want our audience and parents to understand that we do have the opportunity to opt our students out. And we do have the ability to take in, if somebody sees something, hears something, is uncomfortable with something, we as school board members really need to hear that. So that we can bring it here and have this conversation, but you can opt out. The information is on the website. I can help you with it if you decide you want to opt out. I know people are utilizing that. And if we opt out enough as students and parents, that might affect change as well. So we need to use the tools as parents to affect change, is what I'm throwing out there.
Okay, so again, we move on to the upcoming meetings and preliminary topics. If you have something, again, submit it. I'll consider to put it back on the agenda or not have it on the agenda for the superintendent. We have the school board member reports. What do we have, Ms. Annette?
We're gonna start another year. I hope it goes well. I'm encouraged and looking forward to seeing their grades improve again. So let's start out strong and I'll say.
There you go, Ms. Pam?
We set it up tonight. That was my school report.
Mr. Rob?
Just wanted to congratulate the board on finishing 12 in the Olympics in the marathon. What a,
Amazing.
yes, very good. Now, just wondering if there's Anything in the works, like in a football game to recognize her?
I'm not sure. I'll bring it up with, Chris Lindholm, or Lindquist.
Yeah, and then, I know my wife was listening, just happy anniversary.
Smooth.
That's it.
Hi, Andrea.
Yeah.
Miss Amy?
The only thing I will add is, if you want to file for school board candidacy, you like what's going on here, great. If you don't, maybe you want to file, by tomorrow. And I'm going to formally request that we again continue to talk about Pellsby. I do not believe that we have finished the conversation. I believe that we have more, and I do believe we need to put up some guardrails of having some of this stuff not enter the classroom. So, yeah, in policy or something, so that.
Ms. Jones? I also like to say about Dakota, we had the 5 to 7 a.m. Pier 11 at the track and field here just recently, and what a turnout we had. The community, the fire department, the police department, the dance team, the parents. We had one good turnout for Dakota here before she ran the marathon. It
And a
was
beautiful
good to see.
sunrise.
It was very nice. What again, Ms. Vance? I know you were there.
Nice sunrise.
Yeah.
Which I was-
It was a very nice program that Pier 11 brought to our school district, and many times on the news now, we have seen Dakota's name, her picture in St. Francis, Minnesota, and to help promote our state and our city right here. She's our first Olympian from our school district. Now, we've got other good people go forward in your college that were all Americans, wrestlers, and other programs. This is our first Olympian academy. And I also like to just, congratulate Mr. Rob over there. He and his son walked the Grand Canyon down and back in one day. And they survived the big walks and down the Grand Canyon just recently. So welcome back to school. Thanks. Other than that, any other?
Could I add one thing? I want to wish Andrea and Rob a happy anniversary as well. Friday points in, so.
Thanks. What else do you have? What?
Yep, so I just have these conflict of interest forms that just need signed by everyone before you leave
Please do
today.
your conflict of interest paper here and get that turned in before you leave tonight. That's requirement so they know our interest in the school district. Other than that, we have another meeting coming up. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. At this time, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.